Now, Turkey, an important American ally, has been taking in large amounts of Syrian refugees. But now that country is dealing with unrest from its own people. Police have been cracking down on violent anti-government protests over the past 4 days. Protesters feel the government has become too authoritarian. The Turkish prime minister has dismissed claims that he is a dictator. At least one person has been killed and more than 1,700 have been arrested. So joining us now is Pamela Falk, CBS News foreign affairs analyst. Pamela, good morning.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
So this is quite a situation here. The Prime Minister, Erdogan, has tried to sort of dismiss the protesters as just members of the opposition. But we're talking about days and days now, thousands and thousands of people. Right. Some of them had voted for him. They're upset. Why do they think that his government is becoming a dictatorship?
Well, this started as a protest about the removal of a park and the building of a mosque and an airport and a canal. And it really developed into as a question about his leadership, about democracy, about the future of Turkey, about Turkish identity. Mm-hmm. And so part of the policies that he is imposing and implementing are to have more religion, less drinking, less public parks, and to really make the economics the focus of the city. Mm-hmm. And that has come up against an incredible accumulation of quite a few different groups, the doctors, the unions, the general residents of both Ankara and Istanbul, and that is also linking a little bit into politics. Mm-hmm. The president is supportive of the protester, Gül, and Erdogan, as you mentioned, the prime minister, has been very dismissive of the protesters.
And so what has been the American reaction so far?
U.S. reaction, Secretary of State Kerry has been there 3 times since he became Secretary of State. It's, as you mentioned, a very important U.S. ally, mm-hmm. NATO ally, and very important in all of the conflict with Syria. The Syrian conflict has spilled over. There are 40,000 refugees in Turkey, and also the Kurdish-Iraqi conflict mm-hmm. on Turkey's border. And so they're starting to see a lot. This is the 3rd term, 10 years in power for Erdogan, and people feel, it seems that the protests seem to show, that he's too autocratic and too authoritarian. And so that, combined with a bit of a difference between secularists and more religious Muslims, is really spilling into the streets with almost 100,000 protesters at one point in these 4 days.
How important is Turkey to the stability of the region? What key role does it play?
It plays a very key role, and mainly in its role as NATO, in NATO. In mm-hmm. other words, the refueling of U.S. planes, the port, the ability of Turkey to be in the region as a U.S. ally, also to negotiate. They've negotiated with Syria quite a bit. They've negotiated with Iraq, obviously. And so that role as a bellwether and also a very important strategic and geopolitical ally is threatened to some extent by this.
Let's switch gears just a little bit before you go. I want to ask you about something else. At the United Nations, 65 countries signed a treaty regulating global arms trade.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that and what sort of impact this treaty could have.
This has been 7 years in the making. It's conventional arms treaty, and the idea is to try to limit the amount of conventional arms that go into the hands of extremists and can be involved in war crimes. Mm-hmm. And so any state that exports arms, this is a $65 to $80 billion industry, in ways that they know that that's going to happen to their arms, sold on the black market. That is what it restricts. The U.S. said it will sign it, mm-hmm. but the U.S. Senate is balking quite a bit. There's a lot of opposition in the U.S. Senate, so it may be very hard for the U.S. to ratify. The framers seem to think U.S. will follow it anyway.
All right, very interesting stuff. Pamela Falk, CBS News foreign affairs analyst. Thanks for joining us again this morning.
Absolutely. Good to be here, Anne-Marie.